The gradient here rises at 1 in 80, not severe by the standard of mountain railways. But the line between Luxembourg City and Arlon runs through terrain that the civil engineers of the 1860s understood very well. Rolling forest, limestone ridges, the kind of country where the ruling grade is not the problem. The political geography is. The locomotive working this consists in the autumn of 1868, carries no national insignia. It is a French machine. It belongs to the Compagnie de Chemin de Fer de l'Est, the Eastern Railways Company, and it is operating on track that technically belongs to the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. The leasing agreement runs for 50 years. The Est has the men, the machines, and the operating rights. The consist behind it is nothing exceptional. Mixed freight, coal from the Liège Basin, timber from the Ardennes, manufactured goods moving east and west. But the railway underneath that freight, the infrastructure, the concessions, the operating rights, that is what 6 governments are about to argue about. Because the Est is not content with Luxembourg, it wants Belgium. Before we continue, if this kind of railway history matters to you, consider subscribing to the channel. Every video here is built around the locomotives and railway systems that the standard histories overlooked, the machines that outperformed their celebrated counterparts, the engineering decisions that were ahead of their time, and the railway lines that shaped nations without receiving the recognition they deserved. If that is the kind of documentary worth watching to you, the subscribe button is how you tell us, and we want to hear from you. Did you work on the railways? As a driver, a fireman, a fitter, a signalman, a track engineer? Did a parent or grandparent spend their career on a railway that is no longer operating, on a locomotive class that is no longer preserved, or in a workshop that is no longer standing? Leave it in the comments. The people who actually operated these machines know things that do not appear in any published railway history. We want to hear from them. Now, back to the locomotive. To understand what the crisis of 1868 and 1869 actually was, you have to understand what the Compagnie des Chemins de Fer de l'Est was trying to build. Not just a railway company, a corridor. The Est already operated the principal French lines east of Paris, the routes to Strasbourg, to Metz, to the Rhine frontier. Its locomotive fleet in the late 1860s was built around a series of capable freight machines, primarily 0 to 60 tender engines designated in the Est internal series as the Mammoth class, 2 inside cylinders, Stephenson valve gear, boiler pressure running at 8 to 9 kilograms per square centimeter, equivalent to approximately 114 to 128 pounds per square inch, driving wheels of found 430 millimeters, just under 4 feet 9 inches, working weight in the region of 29 to 30 tons. These were not experimental machines. They were the proven workhorses of one of France's most strategically positioned railway companies. But in 1857, the Est had done something remarkable. It had signed a 50-year operating agreement with the Société Royale Grand-Ducale des Chemins de Fer, Guillaume Luxembourg, the Royal Grand Ducal Railway of Luxembourg. The deal gave the Est operating rights over 4 lines radiating from Luxembourg City, south to the French border at Thionville, west to the Belgian border at Arlon, east to the Prussian border at Trier, and north toward the interior of the Grand Duchy. The Est now controlled in operational terms every iron road leaving Luxembourg in every direction. That was not an accident. In October 1868, 2 Belgian railway companies, the Grande Compagnie du Luxembourg, running north from Luxembourg City through the Ardennes, and the Chemin de Fer Liégeois-Limbourgeois, connecting Liège to the Dutch border, approached the east. Both were in financial difficulty. Both were prepared to accept a French operator. What the Est's acceptance would have created was a single continuous French-controlled rail corridor, running from the Swiss frontier at Basel, north through Alsace, east through the Luxembourg network, west through the Belgian Ardennes, and terminating at the Netherlands border near the Dutch city of Maastricht. From Switzerland to Holland, across Belgium, through Prussian-adjacent territory, the entire eastern face of the European continent, threaded by French iron, Bismarck noticed. The North German Confederation sent no formal protest. It did not need to. The intelligence channels were sufficient. Paris was told that the North Germans considered a French-controlled rail corridor running east of the Rhine to be a matter of strategic interest, and not in a reassuring sense. Britain watched from a position it had rehearsed since 1839. The neutrality of Belgium was a British commitment. The Treaty of London had guaranteed it. Any power acquiring dominant influence over Belgian infrastructure, whether through armies or through railway concessions, was, in the British Foreign Office's reading, exercising precisely the kind of influence the treaty was designed to prevent. The Netherlands had practical concerns. The Liégeois-Lembourgeois line terminated at its border. French operational control over that terminus would place a French locomotive on Dutch soil every time a consist reached the end of the track. That was 6 governments now calculating their position over a freight locomotive's route through the Ardennes. The Belgian Parliament moved first. On February 6, 1869, the government submitted a bill. Its language was precise. No foreign company could acquire or finance Belgian railways without the explicit approval of the Belgian state. The law passed on February 23, 17 days from introduction to enactment. The legislature understood what was at stake. The chemin de fer de l'Est did not withdraw quietly. There were negotiations, the Franco-Belgian Committee in Paris, sessions that ran into April. Napoleon III was under pressure from multiple directions simultaneously. The British made their position known through the Foreign Secretary, Lord Clarendon. The Prussians communicated through other means. The Belgian government refused to yield. The Dutch watched the border and said nothing publicly. On April 25, 1869, a protocol was signed. The Est relinquished its claim to the Belgian lines. The Grande Compagnie du Luxembourg and the Liégeois-Lembourgeois would eventually pass to Belgian state ownership, not French corporate control. Napoleon III had given ground. Bismarck had watched him give it. The following year, France and Prussia went to war. Whether the humiliation of the railway crisis contributed to the miscalculation that led to the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 is a question historians continue to debate. What is not debated is that the diplomatic correspondence of 1868 and 1869 treated the Est's locomotive fleet on the Guillaume, Luxembourg network as a strategic instrument, not just freight machines, tools of territorial extension by other means. The chief engineer at the Est did not design his 060s with European geopolitics in mind. He designed them to haul freight over gradients efficiently with the metallurgy and boiler technology available to him in the late 1850s. The politicians and the diplomats made something else of them. The locomotives are gone. The mammoth-class 0-60s that worked the Guillaume-Luxembourg network, that crossed the Belgian border at Arlon, that terminated at the edge of the Netherlands. They were scrapped in the ordinary course of fleet renewal, as 19th-century freight engines were. No preserved example survives. The operational records of the Est's working arrangements on the Luxembourg lines are preserved in French railway archives, but they do not appear in the standard English-language histories of railway development. What those machines represented, the physical embodiment of a French strategic ambition expressed through operating concessions, lease agreements, and locomotive deployments rather than military force, is not generally how railway history is written. The 1869 Belgian railway crisis is remembered, when it is remembered at all, as a diplomatic footnote, a minor crisis before the larger catastrophe of 1870. A tempest in a teapot, as one contemporary observer put it. It was not a tempest in a teapot. It was the moment when 6 European governments, France, Belgium, Britain, Prussia's North German Confederation, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, calculated their geopolitical positions against a map of railway concessions and locomotive operating rights. The infrastructure of industrial transport had become, by 1868, an instrument of power as real as any army. The chief engineer at the Est built machines to move freight. The diplomats of 5 nations spent the better part of a year arguing about where those machines were allowed to go. The locomotive is not always just a locomotive. If this is the kind of railway history you want to keep watching, subscribe to the channel. There are more locomotives, more railway systems, and more engineering achievements still to document. And if you have a connection to what you just watched, A family member who drove this class, worked in the workshops that maintained it, or operated on the railway that deployed it? Tell us in the comments. What did they drive? Which railway? Which depot? Which line? The people who operated these machines are not in the standard histories, but the engineering record depends on what they remember. We want to hear from them.